All right, let's talk about the racial wealth gap in the U.S. We talk about this. I try and bring this topic up every so often, just to make sure it remains at the front of our brain. Not only the fact that there is a wealth gap, but a racial wealth gap, but try and figure out ways to close it from an individual perspective. Things that we can do to better our situation, wealth wise. All right, so tap in. Let's check this out. It's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.
That Union General Gordon Granger brought the news to enslaved people in Galveston, Texas, more than 2 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. Later that same year, slavery was formally abolished in the United States with the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Hardships, however, continued to hurt Black Americans all these years later, including what is a persistent wealth gap. According to a Federal Reserve Bank survey, the average level of wealth in a Black household was just over $200,000, while a white household averaged over $1.3 million. A fresh new book, 15 cents on the dollar, How Americans Made the Black-White Wealth Gap, examines the massive wealth disparity that has been virtually stuck for generations and details the structural economic barriers that Black Americans are still facing today. The co-authors of this book, Louise Story and Ebony Reed, join me now here in Studio 57 to dive into what you have both been telling me is a topic that no book exists on as far as the history and where it is, where things stand to the present day. That to me is remarkable. But first, talk to me about you both meeting at the Wall Street Journal during the pandemic and going through experiences that made you realize a book like this is even necessary.
Sure. Thank you for having us. In the summer of 2020, like many people in our country, Louise and I, we were trapped in our homes that first summer. We couldn't go anywhere. And so we started having conversations in that pandemic summer about injustices and equities we had seen in our lifetimes and workplaces. We were reading books together, and we found that there was no book that had reported on the Black-white wealth gap from history to current time with real contemporary people that are living today.
Louise, why was that? Why is that?
Well, wealth has not actually been a big focus of discussions, and it's not very well understood in our country. When you talk a lot about equality and even economic equality, people focus more on income. I'm sure you've heard a lot about the pay gaps.
Right.
And that's partly because, companies can do something about income gaps, right? There's been a lot of move for pay equity, and also because that's something that started with the male and female pay gap. So the pay gap and income gap has dominated a lot of conversations, but income is different from wealth. Wealth is what you own minus what you owe. And even two people working today at most places who are Black and white making the same income would, statistically speaking, have very different levels of wealth. So we thought it was essential that we put some focus on this.
And for many of us, wealth is inherited. The income you make now is something you can do about. Some of this you can't really control. You have both tracked the lives of 7 Black Americans throughout the book to help personify and give examples for this massive wealth disparity. Give us an example of one person you profiled and what stood out to the both of you.
Sure. Among the 7 people, I want to say is Ambassador Andrew Young, civil rights leader. Many people remember him as being the former mayor of Atlanta.
Right.
We have Michael Render, known as Killer Mike, the rapper. We also have a television executive and some people that others will encounter for the first time as they read the book. One family story that really sticks out to me is a young leader. He was formerly the head of the Georgia NAACP. He was trying to move his life forward economically while also fighting for civil rights, and he had more than $100,000 in student loan debt. And so the debt of student loans is a very crushing thing for many Black families. Many Black students who graduate from college carry a lot of student debt.
I'm glad you used that word, crushing, because it's difficult for anyone who carries that debt, but particularly if you don't have those lifelines at home that you've inherited. One thing you both take great effort to do is not to take any position of a government policy or perspective, but you do look at how government programs have at least exacerbated the problem or in some ways helped ameliorate it. Louise, what jumps out at you as far as government programs that are partly to blame and can do something about it?
You know, there's examples through all of history and even through today of government programs that have been more helpful to white families and not as helpful to black families. So they've been unequally applied. And, you know, some things that jump out, we cover Freedmen's Bank, which is a bank for formerly enslaved people in the late 1800s, which took their money and then lost most of their money. And we talk about the New Deal, which created mostly helped the white middle class. But actually the New Deal and the GI Bill were not so easily available to black Americans. But we also talk about things today, like the bankruptcy system, which actually is race neutral. Anyone could file for bankruptcy, but the experience is not actually a race neutral experience. And black Americans who enter bankruptcy are much less likely than white Americans to have their debts restructured or forgiven, which, by the way, if you get your debt forgiven, you're wealthier because some of that debt is gone, and more white Americans, a higher percentage of them who file for bankruptcy, are able to get the debt forgiveness. So we have a chapter on that.
Okay, and I know that your effort for both of you making this book, putting so much data, research, time, and effort into it, is to make it as accessible to people as possible. And that's partly because, Louise, I'd heard you mention that most people in America don't believe or don't know that there even is a wealth gap. Why is that?
You know, again, it's because people don't actually know what wealth is. People confuse wealth with income. And also, people see someone with a house and they think they're wealthy, but they don't know about that hidden debt behind it. We're all kind of private about wealth. I mean, you may not even know the wealth of people in your family. So people don't talk about wealth in their social circles, and the government does not release much information on wealth. And that leads to a lack of understanding about who has it and who doesn't.
What do you walk away from this book with? What suggestions can the rest of us take to address this disparity in some way?
Thank you. So first, people need to know the statistic, and we are working hard to try to make this a nationally known statistic, 15 cents on the dollar. Louise and I have been holding forums and community symposiums since February across this country.
And briefly explain that premise. I think we mentioned it at the top, but it's worth repeating.
Yes. So the typical black family has 15 cents in wealth for every $1 the typical white family has. And in terms of what people can do, one of the things we recommend at the end of the book with our personal recommendations is that at some point in people's lives, they consider working in partnership with a person who is different from them to understand another person's lived experiences and the issues they face in this country. And we've certainly done that working together on this book.
You guys are a model for what the rest of us could potentially do. It's an incredible read. I'm so glad you put so much effort and research into this. Ebony Reed and Louise Story, authors of 15 Cents on the Dollar, How Americans Made the Black-White Wealth Gap. Thanks so much for your time and joining me today.
Very, very informative. I hope y'all was paying attention. Hope y'all was paying attention. The key thing that I heard in this video, which is something that I stress heavily, even on this channel and just in my personal circle, is debt. Debt is the ultimate wealth killer, and I understand, and I think most people understand that, unfortunately, because many African American families do not have generational wealth, we are much more likely to take on debt than other groups. And then, like the lady mentioned here in this video, even trying to get debt relief is much more difficult for African Americans than other groups. So then you have the generational wealth side, and the fact that African Americans are not born into money as often, and then on top of that you have the systemic side where the benefits and the things that the country does offer to assist if and when an individual is in a extreme debt situation, African Americans are less likely to get. So it's twofold. So what does that say? Stay your asses out of debt. And I will continue to say that until the day I stop breathing. Stay y'all asses out of debt. That's for school. That's for businesses. Uh, that's for property. Obviously, you know, it's almost impossible to get a mortgage without, or I'm sorry, to get a piece of property without a mortgage, which is a form of debt. But even doing that, you need to make an informed decision on the property that you buy, and understand that, just like she said, a lot of people see someone with a house or uh, are going into purchasing a house. Do you realize that you do not own that house until it's paid off? You have a stake in it, right? But a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm a homeowner now." They don't even have any equity. You don't own anything at that point. At least that, if you're lucky, after the first couple of years, you got some equity. You could say, you can somewhat say you're a homeowner because you own a piece of that house. But then, even then, mathematically speaking, like she said, wealth is about debt, uh, uh, not debt to income. Wealth is about your debt versus your assets. So, I say I've been living in a home for 5 years, and I got $200,000 worth of equity built up in it. Okay, just with that statement alone, that's $200,000 worth of wealth. But then let's dig a little deeper. I have no 401k because I took it out to put a down payment on this house. Okay, I have $150,000 worth of student loans debt, and my wife has $150,000 worth of student loan debt. Uh, we just bought brand new cars that are $50,000 a piece. When you do the math, that's $400,000 worth of debt that I just explained, and $200,000 of equity in the house. You don't own anything. You're what you owe overtook what you own in assets. So the day you die, your debts will need to be paid off first before anybody can even touch the equity that you have, which will be less than what you think you have on paper, which is what she explained in terms of, the typical wealth in the black family versus the typical wealth in the white family. So what do? Let's not be typical. Okay, let's not be a typical person at all. Stay out of debt. Increase your income for sure, because that's the one thing that black folks we focus on, is trying to increase our income, but we never trying to increase our overall wealth, because as soon as we get a higher income, we go and take out more debt, which is why I've always preached, and I'm glad that I did it before I started making good money, understanding how money works, getting yourself out of debt, getting your financial situation together before you start making good money. That was the best decision that I could have possibly done for myself. Before I started the business, before I started Black Primacy, before I started making good money, before I started making money on the side and bringing in extra income, I had taught myself and changed my behavior, my spending behavior, before any of that happened. So guess what? Now, when I'm here and doing my thing financially, I don't owe anybody anything. It's all money in. This is a good topic, and one we will continue to have on this channel. Y'all let me know what y'all think. No, y'all out there struggling? Y'all doing good? What's the word? I guess those are two it, those are words that can only be answered by a person's perspective. But um, when's the last time you looked at your financial portfolio? Do you actually, do you have a positive net worth? That's the real question. I got a positive net worth. Is your net worth positive? If it's not positive, you really need to be paying attention. You really need to be paying attention. And I'm not judging anybody. I'm just saying, if you don't have a positive net worth, you cannot and you're not doing anything or looking for ways to change that, you can't complain about anything when it comes to finances, because you're not showing that you care anyway. And there's no government policy that's going to change anytime soon. There's nothing external that's going to change anytime soon that will help you out of your situation. So the only thing we can do is focus on it ourselves. Stop waiting on other people to do the things for us. And it's not easy. Let me be the one to tell you. Y'all let me know what y'all think. All right, it's Ricky Rich with Black Primacy. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your notifications.